It was supposed to be a night of joy, the beginning of a lifelong journey for Emma and David. The wedding was perfect. White roses lined the aisle. The sound of laughter echoed through the grand hall, and the couple's love radiated like a fairy tale come true. Friends and family toasted to their future, and the night ended with cheers as they headed off to their luxurious honeymoon suite. But by morning, the dream had turned into a nightmare. The once pristine suite was now a blood-soaked crime scene. Ryan and David lay motionless, their lifeless bodies sprawled on the floor, the bed untouched. Police tape replaced the floral decorations, and questions hung heavy in the air. How could a night filled with love, happiness, and celebration end in such horrifying tragedy? What really happened behind those locked doors? These were the questions everyone wanted answered, and the truth would prove more shocking than anyone could imagine. Emma Brooks was a name that many people knew. As a popular influencer from Austin, Texas, she had a way of drawing people in with her bright smile and polished style. Her social media accounts were filled with glimpses of her exciting life. Beautiful vacation spots, fun outings with friends, and thoughtful posts that felt personal and real. She didn't just share the highs. She talked about struggles too, which made her followers feel connected to her. To many, Emma was more than just an influencer. She was someone who made them believe in love, ambition, and a life worth working for. Jack Rivers, Emma's husband, was the quieter one. A talented software engineer, Jack preferred to stay out of the spotlight, but he was always by Emma's side, supporting her dreams. People admired him for being the steady, reliable partner who complemented Emma's lively personality. Jack's dedication to his work and his love for Emma made their relationship seem strong and unshakable. Together, they were a team, and their love story played out like something from a modern fairy tale. From their romantic engagement in Greece to their dream wedding, they captured hearts everywhere. Then there was Ryan Carter, Jack's best friend since their college days. Ryan was outgoing and fun, the kind of guy who could light up any room. He was a regular presence in Emma and Jack's life, often appearing in Emma's posts and videos. Whether it was a dinner party, a weekend trip, or just a casual hangout, Ryan was always there. He was more than a friend. He was like family. To everyone around them, their friendship seemed unshakable. But behind the laughter and closeness, there was something deeper between Jack and Ryan that no one else knew about. Their bond wasn't just built on years of friendship. It carried secrets that they both kept hidden. While Emma celebrated her life with Jack publicly, there were parts of his life she wasn't aware of. From the outside, Emma, Jack, and Ryan seemed like a group of people who had everything figured out. Their connections looked strong, their lives happy. But the events that unfolded on the night of Emma and Jack's wedding would show how much of their story had been hidden. The truth, when it came to light, would be far different from what anyone expected. Emma had always noticed something about Jack and Ryan's relationship that felt different. They were inseparable, always together whenever they had the chance. At first, she found it endearing. Jack had told her early on in their relationship how much Ryan meant to him, how they'd been through so much together since their college days. Emma admired the bond they shared. She thought it was nice that her husband had someone he could trust so deeply. But over time, little things began to stand out. She'd catch them sharing these looks, silent, almost like they were having a conversation without saying a word. Whenever they were together, they'd drift into their own world, whispering to each other and laughing at jokes she wasn't part of. Even in group settings, Emma sometimes felt like the outsider when Jack and Ryan were together. It wasn't overt, nothing she could directly point to, but the way they acted around each other left her feeling uneasy. There were moments that made her pause, like the time she walked into the room and they both stopped talking abruptly, their expressions shifting as if they'd been caught. Or how Ryan always seemed to know what Jack was thinking, even without him saying anything. And then there were the trips, those spontaneous boys' weekends that Jack insisted were just about reconnecting with an old friend. Emma trusted Jack, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to it than he was letting on. She tried to brush it off. She loved Jack and didn't want to ruin the life they were building together. Every time her mind went down that path, she'd tell herself she was overthinking, that it was silly to question the bond between two best friends. Jack had never given her a reason not to trust him, and besides, she had worked so hard to build what she thought was the perfect relationship. Why would she risk it all over a gut feeling? So Emma pushed the doubts aside. She convinced herself that it was her imagination, that she was being paranoid. She told herself that the glances, the whispers, the closeness, it was all harmless. But deep down, a part of her couldn't ignore the unease. It lingered like a shadow, always there, even as she tried to ignore it. The wedding day was everything Emma had dreamed of. The sun shone brightly as she walked down the aisle, her white gown flowing like a soft cloud. Jack's smile at the altar made her heart swell with love, and their vows brought tears to the eyes of friends and family. The reception was a celebration of their love, a grand affair with laughter, dancing, and endless toasts to their future together. Emma couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. As the night wound down, Emma slipped away from the lingering guests, excited to finally be alone with Jack. Her heart raced as she approached the honeymoon suite, ready to begin their new life together. She quietly opened the door, expecting to find her husband waiting with the same excitement she felt. Instead, her world fell apart in an instant. Inside the room, Jack wasn't alone. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat as she saw him with Ryan. The scene before her was unmistakable, an intimate moment shared between her husband and his best friend. It was as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She wanted to unsee it, to erase the image from her mind, but it was too late. Shock rooted her to the spot, her heart pounding in disbelief. Tears welled in her eyes as the truth of what she was seeing sank in. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her hands trembling as she stared at Jack and Ryan. They did nothing to ease the storm inside her. Emma's hands clenched into fists, her breaths coming faster and faster as her emotions spiraled out of control. The humiliation, the betrayal, the lies, it was too much. She couldn't think clearly anymore. Her eyes darted to the dresser where Jack's service pistol rested in its holster, a habit from his time in the reserves. Without thinking, she stormed across the room and grabbed the weapon, her hands gripping it tightly. Jack's eyes widened in alarm, and he held up his hands again. "Emma, put that down," he said carefully, his voice calm but laced with fear. "You don't want to do this." Emma's chest heaved as she pointed the pistol at them, her emotions boiling over. "You don't get to tell me what I want right now, Jack," she spat, her voice trembling. The room was filled with the sound of her ragged breathing, and the weight of the moment pressed down on all three of them. Jack tried to step closer, his voice soft. "Emma, please, I'm sorry, we can talk about this. Just put the gun down." But Emma wasn't hearing him anymore. Her mind was racing, consumed by the pain and betrayal. as the situation spiraled toward a breaking point. Emma's hand trembled as she held the pistol, her vision blurred with tears. The weight of Jack's betrayal and Ryan's silent guilt crushed her, feeding the storm inside her heart. "You!" she screamed, pointing the gun at Ryan. "You ruined everything. You pretended to be my friend, all while sneaking behind my back. You took him from me." Ryan raised his hands, his face pale, stepping back instinctively. A deafening shot rang out. Ryan fell to the floor, clutching his chest as blood pooled beneath him. Jack cried out in horror, rushing toward Emma. "No! What have you done? Emma, stop!" His desperation only fueled her rage. She turned the gun on him, her emotions a chaotic mix of heartbreak and fury. Another shot shattered the air. Jack staggered backward, clutching his side before collapsing to the floor beside Ryan. Emma stood frozen, her chest heaving as she stared at what she had done. The love of her life and the man she once trusted lay lifeless at her feet. The pistol slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, shaking violently as the weight of her actions crushed her. There was no going back now. The trial was a spectacle, drawing crowds both in the courtroom and on every screen broadcasting the proceedings. Emma Brooks sat at the defense table, a shadow of the vibrant influencer the world once knew. Her face was pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as the prosecution began their case. The prosecutor stood confidently before the jury, painting Emma as a jealous, cold-blooded murderer who had acted with clear intent. Emma Brooks could not bear the thought of losing control of her marriage, her image, or her perfect life. When she walked into that honeymoon suite, she saw not just betrayal but a threat to the facade she worked so hard to maintain. And she acted, not out of passion, but with deliberate violence. They described Emma retrieving the gun as an intentional choice, a moment when she decided to take lives. Evidence was laid bare. The pistol, its registered ownership under Jack's name, and Emma's fingerprints smudged across the grip. Witnesses testified to her public persona, the image of a woman who appeared happy but always tightly in control. The prosecution highlighted the calculated nature of her actions, claiming that her anger had brewed for years, finally spilling over into tragedy. When it was the defense's turn, Emma's attorney countered with a narrative of heartbreak and emotional collapse. Emma Brooks is not a murderer. She is a woman who snapped under unbearable pressure. The betrayal of her husband, the humiliation on what should have been the happiest night of her life, and the weight of living up to an image the world demanded from her. They brought psychologists to the stand, who testified about the devastating effects of public scrutiny and emotional trauma. Text messages between Emma and Jack were read aloud in court, showing her repeated efforts to communicate her insecurities about Jack's closeness with Ryan. She felt the cracks in her marriage, but chose to trust her husband, her lawyer argued. She wanted to believe in the love they shared, despite the doubts gnawing at her. Ryan's role in the betrayal was laid bare, his connection to Jack discussed in painful detail. The defense portrayed Ryan as the silent instigator, a man who had contributed to years of deceit. While they did not excuse Emma's actions, they insisted the shooting was a moment of emotional breaking, not premeditated murder. Outside the courtroom, the case dominated the headlines. Emma's followers, once united in admiration, were now deeply divided. Some flooded social media with messages of sympathy. She's a victim of love and betrayal. Who wouldn't lose control in her position? Others were far less forgiving. She made a choice to pull that trigger. Cheating doesn't justify murder. The trial also sparked debates about broader issues. The pressure of maintaining a perfect public image came under scrutiny. Many questioned whether the influencer lifestyle had contributed to Emma's emotional instability. As the trial drew to a close, both sides made their final arguments. The prosecution asked the jury to hold Emma accountable for her actions, emphasizing the irreversible loss of 2 lives. The defense pleaded for understanding, urging the jury to see Emma as a human being overwhelmed by grief and betrayal. The courtroom was tense as Emma Brooks stood to hear her sentence. The judge's words landed heavily. 12 years in prison, with eligibility for parole in 7. Emma's hands shook as she processed the reality. 7 years if she behaved, a chance to rebuild, though the road ahead would be far from easy. Reactions were divided. Supporters saw the sentence as harsh, given her emotional distress and lack of a criminal history, while critics called it too lenient for taking 2 lives. As she was led out in handcuffs, Emma kept her head down, avoiding the flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Inside prison, Emma faced a stark new reality, with time to reflect on her actions and the devastating cost of that night. Parole in 7 years offered hope, but she knew the consequences of her choices would follow her forever. The tragedy left a permanent scar on everyone it touched. 2 lives were lost, a promising future destroyed, and Emma Brooks, a woman once admired by millions, was left to carry the weight of her choices. The courtroom drama faded, but the consequences lingered, a reminder of how quickly love, trust, and betrayal can collide with devastating results. Trust is a fragile bond, one that can be shattered by secrets kept too long in the shadows. Jack's hidden life, Ryan's silence, and Emma's unchecked rage created a perfect storm that no one walked away from unscathed. In the end, the story of Emma Brooks is not just about love or betrayal. It's a cautionary tale about the heavy price of secrets and the destruction they leave in their wake.